Hey guys, so what's been happening in the hobby this week? Well, with AOS 4 coming, I thought it would be a good idea for us to have a little bit of a chat, about the changes, and in particular, I'm going to be painting Gardus here for Stormcast in my custom scheme. I've wanted to paint this model for a while, so I thought we'd do that. And he's a really good choice for this discussion. We're going to be talking about, I guess strengthening yourself against the changes of editions, the squatting of models, and appreciating the minis for what they are, which are art objects, and sort of some of the benefits and so on into looking at your minis in this way, as a painted art object, rather than necessarily just a gaming piece, to sort of remove some of that disappointment that might come from a model being removed. Gardus here is in old armor. There's going to come a time where he's probably not going to be in the edition, or at least they'll change him, something like that, and this model may become legended, or squatted from the game. And that can cause you some disappointment, and so I think that it's a really healthy thing to readjust, let's say, your perspective on your minis, and appreciate them for what they are, which are sculptures, and enjoy them in their own right. And so this conversation is going to go along with the previous ones we've had on collecting a faction over an army, and the benefits that can come from a more holistic collection, instead of, let's say, just 2,000 points or a singular force, which is also good, but the wider collection offers some benefits. And alongside that, approaching this from I really love just to paint this for the sake of it, or if you don't like painting, commissioning work painted for you to appreciate them for what they are, can help remove some of that disappointment as things change, as the game goes along. So I thought this would be a bit of a healthy one for us to talk about, as it is pertinent, as AOS 4 is coming shortly, and I thought it'd be fun to get this one done, because I've wanted to paint him for a bit. I've had him sitting on the shelf, waiting patiently to get some paint on him, so I thought this would be an interesting little discussion while we do this. So for those that haven't seen, this is brass armor using color glazing techniques with shade colors from GW, so we're going to be going through that, and you'll see it all come together at the end. So I'll stop waffling on about the intro here, and we'll get started, eh? Yeah, so AOS 4 is coming, and there are quite a lot of significant changes to the game. There are some similarities too, but if they're from these faction focuses that we've seen over the course of these last few weeks, it's definitely shaping up to be quite a different game, than its predecessors. And part of that is to do with the core rules and the core structure, abilities and actions that are able to be used over the course of the game using CP. Like the casting magic in your opponent's turn, charging in your opponent's turn. There's a lot of abilities that happen in your opponent's turn. Obviously, you'll need to use CP for this, but what that means is that the game has a lot of double activation sort of mechanics going on. So double fighting, double shooting, double charging, double moving, double magic, etc. It won't be infinite across the 5 turns, but there is a lot of it, and there is even double fight abilities, in factions themselves, which we've also seen, which is quite liberally sprinkled around. There's quite a few factions that have the access to this, in addition to the core abilities of those, double actions as well, or abilities as they call them. So, there's quite a lot there to take in, and really these faction focuses don't really quite paint the full picture. They give you some idea, but we won't really know for sure until after the indexes have dropped and we start seeing battle tomes release. Then you'll start to see the real shape of the game. And I think what it really points to is, CP is going to be, command points are going to be really the crucial linchpin, because a lot of this double activating sort of stuff revolves around that. And they have said they're going to they've limited the CP, but as we all know, traditionally GW is a little bit, a bit, let's say, haphazard with its control of things like that in games. I can't think of any game that they've ever made that really does tightly to control some of the more explosive elements of a game. They like to let those things run away a little bit from time to time during an edition. So, will they be able to hold their guns on dishing out CP to armies as the battle tomes release? School's out on that one. We'll wait and see. But if they do, that will keep the game in line. But if they don't, you'll see some big blowouts where some factions will be able to really make use of those double activation type abilities and really dominate while the other armies don't. And the reason for that is that the battle tomes are released, across the whole edition rather than, let's say, all at the beginning. Yes, you'll have your index, but as we've seen, some of these indexes don't feel as powerful as others. So will that carry you through the course of, let's say, a year or 2 years before your battle tome comes out? Maybe not, depending on how that CP control is done through those other battle tomes. So there is some questions there about the game. For myself personally, I'm sure everyone is thinking about these things and deciding on, because overall it does look fun, but yeah, is this going to be, fun for the whole 3 years? I don't know yet. We'll see. Third edition was a pretty good experience overall. I enjoyed myself. We've had some pretty fun moments during third edition, and it was my first foray into Age of Sigmar, and I've had a good time with it. I've been to some tournaments. I've done some club campaigns. I've been engaged in a whole variety of different levels of gameplay over third edition, and I have enjoyed it. I'm still enjoying the hobby side. The hobby side is one of the best aspects to this. I definitely come from that point of view, which is going to lead into our discussion as we move past talking about fourth edition and getting into some of these ideas on, strengthening your mental state towards these minis and your relationship to them through painting and through the appreciation of art generally, which will help you from the squatting of models, which we'll get onto shortly. But yeah, look, I mean, it's been fun, and so yeah, how good will fourth edition be? I'm not sure. It does look interesting. Like there are aspects of the system which does look good to me. Some of the way that they've changed some of the rules and they've streamlined some aspects of the game. Not to say that this is any simpler than any other edition of their game they've done that I can see. Although I've only played one edition of Age of Sigmar, the game feels just as complex. But they have done some nice little things in there. For instance, your command trait, or the traits that would go on your general normally now can be put on other heroes. There's some flexibilities there. You've got you get the whole spell lore. When you take a spell lore, you don't just have to pick one. All your wizards get it, or all your priests get all of the prayers, etc. across the army, depending on the prayer lore that you take or whatever. There are some nice ease of use kind of changes in the game, which will improve certain aspects of the turn sequence and so on across the battle rounds. So I do like a lot of that. But yeah, there's some other aspects, maybe some broader, wider meta aspects to the game, which may not end up being as fun as some of those more crunchy details that have been altered and changed for ease of use. So yeah, well, I'm hopeful. But we'll wait and see. I really want to see the full indexes and gauge my opinion of how the game's going to go out past that. I mean, I'm still going to be playing it. The guys in my club and everything, we all play Age of Sigmar quite regularly, so I'll still be engaging with it. But Old World has come along, and Old World's really pulling my attention. So AOS has got a bit of a tough road ahead to really stay in the main group of games that I play, because there are other games there that are really like drawing my attention, including things like MCP and Shatterpoint and Infinity and other game systems there. Not only that, but also obviously I make my own brand, Blight of Gods. If you don't know, all the little sculpted characters you see on the thumbnails and on my channel banner and all of that sort of thing come from my own sculpts, and I do my own miniature range, and you would have seen some of those videos on the channel if you've been watching my channel for a while. And I've got a game system that I've been working on for a long time that's slowly coming to fruition over the next year or two, and I've got to start playtesting that more thoroughly, so that's going to take my time too. So Age of Sigmar has a little bit of work to do to stay in the foreground there, as a game that I play regularly. So it'll all be something that I'll be into, because again, the hobby side really does keep that interest up because of the minis and so on are so beautiful. It keeps me in it, and I think that's a real strength. If you can foster that kind of love of the process of the hobby side of this in some way, and I said at the beginning, even if you don't like painting, but or you like to get commission painters to paint for you and that sort of thing, you can still get an appreciation of the minis and the paint jobs and so on without actually even engaging in the painting process at all, right? You can be an enjoyer of art without ever being able to do art yourself. That's perfectly normal and fine, and most people fit into this category. So you don't have to say, oh well, that's good for you, Adrian, you paint a lot and you paint to a certain level and all this kind of thing, and it seems that you're satisfied and all that sort of thing. Well, that's great, but I don't get into that. Well, that's okay too. As I said, there are many aspects to art and to creativity, and this is only just an aspect, but you can access it regardless of skill level or ability. So that's a good way for us to lead into this conversation about painting for painting's sake, as we've seen models being squatted and removed from the game. And so Stormcast have a lot of models that have been removed, which is quite disappointing. And I'm painting Gardus here, and who knows how long Gardus will be in this game for, but he's part of my collection, and I'm happy to paint him, even if he ends up sitting on the shelf for a very long time or whatever. I've now painted over 7,000 points worth of Stormcast, and I'm enjoying it still. So that's testament both to the models, the design, and obviously some canny choices from my own for my scheme to keep things enjoyable for myself, which is one of those things that you do as you learn more about painting. You start to get more knowledgeable about the kinds of paint choices that you make to keep things interesting and keep it at a level that you're happy to continue painting, because obviously painting a huge number of models like that will get really tiresome really quickly if you've chosen something that's really difficult to do. There is a balance there of the type of scheme that you choose versus the length of time you're going to spend on it, etc. So that has helped in my love of doing it. But the models themselves do a lot for that enjoyment process. So yeah, let's look at some of those ways in which you can actually, set yourself up for some level of success and a refocusing on the joy of painting these minis for their own sake, separate from the game. And so how might you do that? Well, as I've just alluded to, your scheme, your choice of colors and process and technique is sort of really fundamental to how long you're going to enjoy this for. And it's not something that you have to enjoy forever. You don't have to be like me and paint 7,000 whatever points of Stormcast. That's not necessarily true. It could just be a warband, a small collection of minis, whatever it is. That's not really important. But that might be painted over a long period of time. So you're looking at the length of time that you're on this, and then the scheme itself, and how much fun you enjoy that. And I would always start with what are your favorite colors? What are the colors that you like? Regardless of skill level or anything else like that, or technique. What are the colors you like? And if you were to paint 10,000 points or whatever of a singular faction, what colors would you still be interested in after, on that 10,000 point level? Would you, obviously, which colors would you like? And so for me, things like blues and greens and teals and turquoise and all those sort of colors, are a big one for me. I really like them. So you see them a lot in my schemes. I like to include them in some way because I really like those colors. So you'll have that too. You'll have colors that you really enjoy more than others. And so making them part of the process is probably a really good recipe for success. So I would start there thinking about colors you like, and then look at process. Look at how you can incorporate that into your scheme. If you're someone that doesn't have a lot of time, then you'll be looking at things like, grayscale sketching and contrast paints over the top, that sort of thing, which has become a very popular method for a lot of people, and rightly so. It gets things done quicker. So that might be the road that you go down, and you start doing, lots of these sort of wash type techniques, like with contrast paints and other brands that other paint suppliers guys make as well. Army Painter do one, Vallejo do them. They all do this type of contrast paint method to help speed up the process. So that's one way you could go, and very viable. A lot of people are busy, and that's a good way to do it. And that can actually lead you to an appreciation and love of painting by removing a lot of the difficulty and the laborious nature of doing the more traditional approaches, like you might see me do with these layering techniques and highlighting. It is a bit more of a laborious and time-consuming process, and not for everyone. I certainly don't think that the videos I make and the ways that I show how to paint are necessarily great for everyone, and may not be for you in totality. You might need to find an alternating approach, or maybe a composite, and that's what I would lead to, is that through that sort of more speed paint method, you sometimes find that people start looking at, incorporating a little bit more of those more rigorous techniques layered on top of, or in addition to those contrast methods, and they start to appreciate painting for its own sake as it starts to unlock for them over time. And that's a really great thing. And I've seen it in the club with some of the guys that are painting. They started with those contrast methods, and now they're starting to get a little bit more curious about how to improve and how to do that a little bit more, as their own confidence builds, and they start realizing that maybe they can do this, to a level that they have in their mind, some sort of, aspirational level that you might have about painting, or about the finished product that you've got. And so that leads them down that road. And so you're building up an appreciation of the painting process. And that's a really great thing to get into, because it means that whether the model is in the game or not, you're going to really like that model, and it's going to sit on your shelf and have a whole sort of aura about it, and an experiential kind of thing about it that is always going to be there for you. Every time you look at that model, you're going to remember those times that you spent painting it, etc. And the games as well that you got a chance to game with it. And it's not going to be as sad. It's going to have a nice little life of its own, and enjoy that spot on your shelf as you move forward. But of course, you can still proxy these things and use them in your games anyway. Like, that's all fine. Obviously, but if you didn't, you would still have a very positive experience with that mini. And so I think that's a really great place to begin. And of course, the other obvious one is, if you are interested in more, I guess, not rigorous or laborious, but, sort of more traditional applications of paint, like the sort of things that I show, the layering and the highlighting and the mixing of colors and all of those sorts of things, then you can do that too. If you've got a curiosity about that and you want to try it, people like me out there on the internet that try to, remove some of the difficulty from that process and put it in a more thematic way, an easier way to approach, so that you can understand it. That's why I put the colors in these gradients and do it step by step, so you can see that process moving forward and unlock that. I talk about this a lot with people when they ask about painting, and basically there's a moment that's going to come for you in those first few years, those first formative years of your learning, when you're learning how to paint, that a light bulb will go on, or something will just click in your mind. And the moment that happens on that model, you'll instantly, every other model you do after that levels up by a massive amount. The next year of your painting suddenly is this really big explosion of your skill level, and you just jump. It's like a massive jump, and most painters experience this, at least that I've ever talked to. You'll be struggling and learning, and then at some point on one mini, usually it's a singular mini. It's really, really weird like that. I can still remember the one that I had. It was a Dogs of War model. I can't remember, his name starts with L, I think. It's one of those sort of Roman-looking captain from the old Dogs of War range from fantasy. He's got that sort of Roman armor on with the sword up in the air and the cape on. I can't remember his name, Lorenzo or something like that. I can't remember what his name is, but it was painting the cape on that model. And, it's like seeing into the Matrix. I just suddenly saw the way you're meant to build up the colors across the surface and the highlighting, and it was like seeing the paint as like malleable clay or something. It just suddenly, I could see that it wasn't this sort of very elusive process or something. I was able to manipulate this paint and understand it. It was almost like your coordination and your hand and brush and mind all started to flow together, and I could see how to apply it. And the moment that happened, every other model after that was different. It just jumped in skill level straight away, and I was painting differently from ever after, and that just improved over time. And of course, then it slows down again as you get better. You know, the incremental steps become less and less. It becomes harder to get those next stages, but there is a really good time there where you just jump, and that's an awesome thing. So if you're interested in painting and doing this and digging into this process, you will get there. You will get to a point where you that little light bulb just goes on, and you just suddenly understand how to do it. And it's a really great moment. It's one of the coolest moments in your painting journey, when you reach that point where you just understand how that basic principle of adding values and color and so on to a model goes, and that you can do it. You know, it really strengthens your resolve for doing these processes and spending more time on it as well. And so then we've got the other option, which is, you know, the other sort of tangent, I guess, from the other two, which is, you know, the person that maybe doesn't like to paint at all. And, you know, what are some ways that you can build up that sort of, you know, appreciation? Well, like with all the categories, but especially in this one, you know, you need to be looking at art. you know, really, like, you know, in this case, in the miniature world, looking at minis, looking at painted minis, you know, absorbing that in, the artwork that comes along with it, etc. You know, really immersing yourself in that, and it could be reading the stories, the lore, any number of aspects of this hobby or art in general. It could even be non-miniature related. You know, just immersing yourself in creativity itself, and getting a love and appreciation of that process, and the finished work that comes from that process, and that will help you to give a better appreciation for the paint jobs that you're receiving, right? And so you don't just see them as a gaming piece anymore; they become something more. You know, that sort of story or narrative starts to build around the object, because you're a buyer of art essentially if you're getting them commissioned, right? So you become a collector of art, and that again builds up its own appreciation. And so through that process and through immersing yourself in art, and this goes for any of the categories or anyone in the hobby, you know, you should always be having inspirational images around you or that sort of thing, or at least, you know, have a look around first before you decide on a scheme to see what other people are doing, so you can sort of give yourself some ideas to improve on, let's say, whatever the idea that you had was. And you know, and that cross-pollination of creativity is really important. It's one of the great things about creativity, because we're a group animal. We exist in a sort of large tribe, right? And creativity exists in that same space. We like to, you know, have those ideas melding and together and forming new ideas and new concepts. And that's one of the wonderful things about painting and about the hobby generally. You know, and that also extends to things like conversion and the building of the models and that sort of thing too. The personalization of all of this, which is really what we're talking about. It's about personalizing your experience with your collection, and that will really removes the downsides from what a company might choose for their game or whatever. You know, the individual, let's say the Gardus that you have is no longer attached to that company. Whatever they choose to do, that little model that's now yours in your house has a totally separate life from everything that the company then chooses after, right? It becomes yours, and you get to decide on how that happens for you in your hobby journey. So I guess now we'll think about maybe some cons. So I'm not really sure that there are any cons to, focusing on the joy of painting or the love of creativity generally and art. There's not really any con to that. I can't really think of one. I guess, again, maybe as with the whole collecting a faction thing, there could be a monetary aspect to this that might hinder some of those things, you know, being able to afford the paints, brushes, etc., minis and so on. There could be a limitation there, which is a con. You know, if you were to, you know, go all out on this, you might feel hindered by the fact that you can't get there. You can't get the elements that you need to appreciate it that way. Although I don't think so. I think even with a very limited budget, you could still have a good time painting a mini, even a singular one. It doesn't have to be, as I said, 7,000 points. It could be just one mini, which isn't going to be that costly. So I'm not sure that there is a con per se, but there could be one beyond money, but I'm just not really quite sure what that is. So yeah, there's just some initial, I guess, ideas on the focus of painting and creativity generally to help strengthen your resolve against, the squatting of models or the changing of editions, this sort of thing, to continue enjoying the process. Because for myself personally, as I've alluded to before, from the hobby point of view, I'm having a lot of fun. I've got some questions about the rules and the coming edition of AOS, but that doesn't affect at all my enjoyment of painting minis. I'm enjoying the process of painting this Stormcast army, and Gardus here is no exception. I'm enjoying the process of painting him, as you're now seeing. I should be getting pretty close to finishing him now, and that's great. And if you can imbue some of that kind of strengthening of your own resolve to the creative side of the hobby, as I said, whether you're painting them or you're not, or you're just commissioning them, in either case, you can build up that for yourself, and you'll find that you'll have a much more positive experience generally with the hobby, and these sorts of changes won't affect you as much. So I hope that that's been helpful in some way. Of course, we'll continue these discussions as we go along, and dig into it more. But I think that's a really good place just to begin on that subject, and talk about a few ways in which you could approach it. As I said, I can't think of any real serious cons at the moment. Maybe if you've got some, you can leave them in the comments and we can discuss those in future videos. But yeah, I hope you've enjoyed this. So we'll go now to my closing thoughts and see how Gardus has turned out. And I'm sure he's cool. I've wanted to paint him for a while, so I'm sure that's been fun. But we'll go and check it out now and discuss my closing thoughts. And there we go, Gardus all done. Let's take a look. All right, so yeah, I really love doing this color scheme. It's a fun one, and I'm still enjoying it. So whether I get to use Gardus here or not in games, or whatever happens to him in the future, I've enjoyed this process, and I think that that's really the point of the conversation is finding the joy in that creative process and the appreciation of these minis as they are, and that will give you that sort of armament to protect yourself against the disappointment of what happens to the game and that sort of thing. You can still really get some value out of this creative side of the hobby. So yeah, that's my thoughts so far. We'll improve on this discussion and talk about it further in the future, but I think that's a great place to begin anyway. So I'll leave a nice image for him at the end, as I normally do in the paint list. But I hope you enjoyed this. Please hit the like button, subscribe button. It really helps me out, and I guess I'll catch you on the next one.